Ah, Cotton, do you have the results?
Brachydios, sir.
Brachydios is the hardest monster in Iceborne?
Yes.
But he's only like a mid-tier monster in this game.
Well, have you seen his shell?
Well, that is one consideration, but
No, his obsidian shell. It's near impenetrable.
Oh no, did you?
It is so hard that it would take approximately 7,420 pounds of pressure to—
Cotton, I didn't want to know the hardest monsters. I wanted to know the hardest monster.
Oh, well, why didn't you say so? Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, today we're going to talk about a bit of a touchy subject for some people. Carts.
Bring out today!
And more specifically, the monsters that cause carts the most, whether it be through sheer attack damage or creative abilities that are difficult to dodge. These are the monsters that cause me the most fear. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here are my top 5 hardest monsters in Iceborne.
Honorable mention, Coral Pukei-Pukei.
Now, this one would be a little bit silly to put on the actual list itself, but I do really want to bring up my main man, Coral.
Coral!
When you fight this Pukei subspecies for the first time solo, whether it be your first time seeing him in general or just your first time by yourself, he has an incredibly high chance of decking you back to back to back. It's harder to notice when he has multiple targets, but a good number of Coral Pukei's moves are actually built to make dodging them really hard. The split beam that you need to dodge twice if you are at any sort of range, the giant aerial spiral of water you have to run to the inside of to have any chance of avoiding without invincibility frames, and even his triple water globs that are so perfectly spaced that dodging most directions will still get you hit if you are its initial target. And honestly, just the majority of his water-based moves are very odd patterns and come very quickly. As far as an objective moveset, say if we gave Elder Dragon level damage numbers to Coral Pukei-Pukei, I think he would be carding endgame hunters left and right, but that said, even for his tier 2 monster damage numbers, his moveset is still uniquely hard, and you've been watching him absolutely deck me while I was legitimately trying to fight him properly, so I felt the need to pay homage to this beautiful birdie boy.
Number 5, Shrieking Liana.
Do the roar.
You know anything? How about one of those famous Shrek roars?
Do the roar.
Let me set you straight, Butterpants. An ogre only roars when he's angry. You don't want to see me angry, do you?
Do it.
Okay, now some of you may be questioning this, but I'm sure there are a number of people out there that totally agree with me. Shrieking Liana is a nightmare of a monster. Maybe it is just my choice of weapons when fighting her, maybe I just struggle with having the ice debuff, but something about fighting Shrieking Liana just frustrates me to no end. Part of it for sure is the change to flashes in Master Rank, as Shrieking Liana has one of the most aerial movesets of any monster in the game, and only being able to remove it properly from the air once or twice a hunt just makes the experience as a whole much harder. But a lot has to be said for the enhanced moveset itself, really taking a few tricks from Vulcano, but honestly spending more time using some of these tricks than Vulcano does itself, and when you are spending the entire hunt trying to get directly under the claws to have any chance of hitting this beast, you'll find yourself on the receiving end of an ice attack more often than not. Then all of a sudden you have no stamina to work with, and if you're at a point where healing is more important than eating a nullberry, then guaranteed you'll run out of stamina before you finish the whole thing, and just, this fight is just a sort of kryptonite monster for me. Maybe it isn't for everyone, but Shrieking Liana has fucked me up just a little bit in the past, so this monster gets to enjoy being number 5.
Number 4, Vulcano.
The flagship of Iceborne, Vulcano does not disappoint when it comes to presenting a proper challenge. This Elder Dragon has a multitude of abilities that make the fight uniquely difficult, of course including the ice debuff, which I have already very much talked about my feelings towards today, but more importantly the many different ways in which she uses her ice creation abilities, including dropping little ice blocks on your head, creating sticky web-like patches on the floor, and in my opinion the biggest offender, the ice walls. These ice walls, once destroyed, make a little nice jumping platform for you to use. However, before this, they're massive obstructions. They keep you from moving, they keep you from seeing through them, and for some ungodly reason, they do not at all block ice beams. The amount of times that I have been sniped by an ice beam through one of these walls because the same wall was blocking Vulcano through my camera is hilarious, though I can guarantee you at the time of it happening, I did not consider any of it hilarious. The ice spear tail is extremely quick, and while dodgeable once you learn the patterns, it is still entirely capable of catching you off guard. The beams often come in pairs, which is unusual as all hell, and all of this is again on top of the fact that you have ice debuff if you get hit by pretty much anything at all throughout the hunt. This monster is a beast, but like, you know, in a good way, I think.
Number 3, Savage Deviljho.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.
If you want to understand what you're about to walk into before you see a Savage Deviljho, then you need look no further than his name. It encapsulates it perfectly. Savage. This Deviljho is completely uncultured. Well, actually, he's just extremely aggressive, very, very dragony, and nearly insatiable, much like my ex-wife. I don't actually have an ex-wife. I'm just committed to comedy. Even just looking at his physical ability changes, Iceborne Savage Deviljho is significantly stronger than he's been in the past. He is much better at closing gaps, and he combos some of the strongest attacks together and is just straight up relentless. When it comes to the dragon element, it gets even crazier, and yes, he has the big move where he piles dragon element to the ground until it explodes, and that's super cool, but I don't even think that's his deadliest new dragon attack, as he has the little dragony mines he places on the floor, and that straight beam that he does is absolutely deadly at long range. And unlike most monsters, you're almost guaranteed to have a portion of this fight at a decent range, as Savage Deviljho simply does not stop fighting you. Once he is properly engaged in combat, he will remain enraged in combat until he dies, meaning he won't really leave zones unless something significant happens. And if you try to leave the zone, he'll follow you nearly endlessly. So even something as simple as sharpening becomes one of the most difficult things to do across a Savage Deviljho hunt. On top of this, the permanent enrage means you can't really flint shot this advanced pickle into a wall, removing an entire method of knockdown, and one of the most prominent features of Iceborne's entire system changes. And of course, allowing the Savage Deviljho to have more uptime against you. He is an absolute powerhouse, but in my opinion, only the third hardest monster in this expansion.
Number 2, Gold Ratheon and Silver Rathalos.
Our universe is doomed! Doomed!
Now this one is sort of weird because at the end of the day, I did have to lump these two monsters together, even though individually both of their fights are incredibly difficult in their own right. The reason for this is a lot of things that make one of them more difficult overlap, and that's also what makes the other more difficult, this mostly being related to their Hellfire mode, which lights their chest up blue and makes all of their fire attacks leave behind patches of high ticking damage ground fire that can really take a few years off of your life expectancy. But the individual differences of the two monsters have made it sort of like a number 2 and a number 2.1, as I do consider Gold Ratheon slightly harder than Silver Rathalos in Iceborne. Silver Rathalos gains a bunch of neat fire line attacks that can really change both the pacing and the spacing of a battle, as well as some neat changes to his already existing physical attacks that make them a lot more dangerous. But Gold Ratheon is just at a slightly different level to me. The Hellfire mode isn't quite as big a part of her fight as Silver's, but she makes up for it with extremely augmented backflips and unusual combos, such as interrupting her classic triple fireball or charges that become backflips with forward momentum that are absolutely terrifying. Both of these monsters have absolutely earned their late entry into the game, being two of the last possible 5 monsters that you can unlock, as they are just no joke, and the pair of them together make up my number 2.
Number 1, Runer Nergigante.
I think you heard you.
The real big bad of Iceborne here, the killer of the other killers, Runer Nergigante is absolutely deserving of his place as the MR99 assignment target, and the final monster that you get to genuinely fight, as the story encounter doesn't really quite count. First off, there are a lot less flinches in this fight, not just sheer number of potential flinches, but more that the damage required to break the various parts of Runer is quite significant, so even flinches will be a bit of a struggle to find. Runer hits like a freight train, designed to carry 20 train cars full of cement bricks with nails sticking out of them that are also a little rusty, so you have to get checked for tetanus afterwards too. But Runer's metal spikes themselves aren't rusty at all. In fact, they are pristinely clean and particularly pointy, and capable, of course, of causing the bleed status. Now, this status isn't in a lot of places in the world as a whole, and I think part of that is because it is a totally different beast with our 5th generation healing system. Bleed in old games was about as much of an inconvenience as healing, as you had to stand still anyways, but in the new world, we are so used to our freedom of movement that it just affects us much more on a mental level now. powerful. The augmented attacks that Nergi pulls out, with a near full circle spike expelling attack, the dive bomb that is instead designed more to shoot spikes at you than directly hit you with his body, and honestly just he has far too many ways to close gaps now, meaning you don't really get to have space from him, which makes healing hard and really exaggerates the effect of bleeding as well, as it really is quite hard to just crouch still for 3 seconds if you're fighting him by yourself. Just his combat style combined with how unusual he is compared to most monsters, and his crazy damage numbers, these are all what come together to make Runar Nergigante, in my opinion, the hardest monster in the expansion. Alright everyone, I've been Gotten Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 hardest monsters in Iceborne. Do you agree with my list? What are your top 5 hardest monsters? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the Kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros, there's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.